Captain Sarah Chun pressed her back against the cold metal wall of the alien detention facility, her breath forming small clouds in the frigid air. The Zephyrian guards had stripped her of everything except her basic uniform, leaving her weaponless in a cell designed to hold the galaxy's most dangerous criminals. 3 days had passed since the ambush that destroyed her reconnaissance ship and killed her entire crew. 3 days of endless interrogation and mockery from her captors. The Zephyrians stood nearly 9 feet tall, their elongated limbs covered in chitinous armor that gleamed like polished obsidian. Their forearms moved with mechanical precision, each ending in razor-sharp talons that could tear through steel. Most intimidating were their plasma weapons, sleek energy rifles that could disintegrate a human in seconds. These weapons had made the Zephyrian Empire the dominant force in 3-star systems, their technology far superior to anything humans had developed. Commander Vextal entered Sarah's cell with his usual arrogant stride, his mandibles clicking in what she had learned was their version of laughter. Behind him followed 2 subordinates carrying what appeared to be a primitive projectile weapon, Sarah's own sidearm, that had been confiscated during her capture. The sight of her grandfather's modified M1911 pistol made her heart race, though she kept her expression neutral. Human, Vextal's translator device rendered his chittering speech into mechanical English. Your species continues to amuse us with your primitive technology. Tell me, how does this crude device function? He gestured dismissively at the pistol with one of his lower arms. Sarah remained silent, studying the alien commander's movements. She had noticed something during her captivity. Despite their advanced technology, the Zephyrians were surprisingly ignorant about human warfare. They viewed her people as technologically inferior, incapable of posing any real threat to their empire. This arrogance had made them careless. Your silence speaks volumes, Vextal continued, picking up the pistol with obvious distaste. This weapon appears to function through some form of chemical propulsion. How quaint. Our scientists estimate it could barely penetrate the hull plating of our shuttlecraft, much less pose a threat to a Zephyrian warrior. One of the subordinates stepped forward, his chest plates puffed with pride. Commander, our analysis indicates this device fires small metal projectiles at subsonic velocities. The kinetic energy is laughably insufficient compared to our plasma weapons. A single shot from our rifles contains more destructive force than this primitive tool could generate in 100 rounds. Sarah watched as they passed the weapon between themselves like a curious artifact. They had no understanding of its true capabilities, viewing it through the lens of their own energy-based technology. To them, anything that wasn't plasma-based was automatically primitive and ineffective. This misconception would be their downfall. Your ancestors used similar weapons against wild beasts, did they not? Vextal asked mockingly. Crude implements for a crude species. It amazes us that you humans ever managed to leave your home planet with such inferior technology. The interrogation continued for another hour, with the Zephyrians taking turns examining the pistol and making increasingly condescending remarks about human ingenuity. They spoke freely about their military tactics, their ship configurations, and their weaknesses, assuming that Sarah posed no threat, and that the information would die with her when they eventually executed her for espionage. What they didn't know was that Sarah Chun had spent 15 years in the human colonial marines before joining the diplomatic corps. Her grandfather had been a gunsmith who specialized in custom modifications, and the pistol they held so casually was far from standard issue. The ammunition it contained had been developed specifically for anti-armor applications, using depleted uranium cores and explosive tips designed to penetrate even the most advanced alien alloys. More importantly, the Zephyrians had made a critical error in their assessment of human psychology. They assumed that because humans used projectile weapons, they must be physically and mentally inferior. They had no concept of human determination, adaptability, or the tactical advantages that came from centuries of warfare against their own species. Every human child learned about David and Goliath, about asymmetric warfare, about turning disadvantages into strengths. As night fell over the detention facility, Sarah began to formulate her escape plan. The Zephyrians maintained a skeleton crew during their sleep cycle, believing their automated systems were sufficient to contain any prisoner. Their energy weapons required biometric activation, making them useless to escaped captives. They had grown complacent, secure in their technological superiority. The guard rotation changed every 6 hours, and Sarah had memorized the patterns. The new guards were younger, less experienced, and more prone to the casual arrogance that plagued their entire species. They would enter her cell tomorrow morning for the standard interrogation, bringing her weapon with them as they had done each day. This time, however, would be different. Sarah spent the remaining hours of darkness preparing mentally for what was to come. She reviewed every detail of the facility's layout that she had observed, every weakness in Zephyrian anatomy that her military training had identified, every possible escape route that could lead her back to human space. The Zephyrians had given her 3 days to study them, to understand their weaknesses, to prepare for this moment. They had no idea what they were about to unleash. The irony wasn't lost on her that these aliens, with their advanced plasma weapons and energy shields, had so thoroughly underestimated the destructive potential of a simple chemical-propelled projectile. They measured everything in terms of energy output and technological complexity, missing the fundamental truth that effectiveness in combat wasn't always about having the most advanced weapon. It was about understanding how to use the weapon you had. As the first hints of alien dawn began to filter through her cell's narrow window, Sarah Chun allowed herself a grim smile. The Zephyrians were about to learn a very hard lesson about human ingenuity and about why sometimes the old ways were still the best ways. They had mocked human guns, dismissed human tactics, and underestimated human resolve. Tomorrow, a single trigger would change everything, and the balance of power in this sector of space would shift in ways the Zephyrian Empire could never have imagined. The morning interrogation began exactly as Sarah had predicted. Commander Vextal entered with his usual swagger, accompanied by the same 2 subordinates from the previous day. The modified pistol hung carelessly from one of the junior officer's lower arms, treated like nothing more than a curiosity from a backward species. Today, human, you will finally provide us with the information we seek, Vextal announced, his mandibles clicking with satisfaction. Our intelligence division has grown tired of your silence. Perhaps a demonstration of your own weapon's inadequacy will encourage cooperation. Sarah watched as the junior officer stepped forward, holding the pistol by its barrel with obvious disdain. These aliens had no understanding of proper firearms handling, no respect for the weapon's capabilities. In their arrogance, they had loaded it with a single round, her grandfather's special anti-armor ammunition that they believed was nothing more than a primitive metal slug. Observe, the junior officer said, aiming the weapon at a reinforced wall panel. We shall demonstrate the pathetic nature of human technology. This was the moment Sarah had been waiting for. As the alien's talon moved toward the trigger, she suddenly doubled over in apparent agony, crying out in pain. The Zephyrians immediately turned their attention to her, concerned that their prisoner might be dying before they could extract the information they needed. What is wrong with you, human? Vextal demanded, stepping closer to examine her condition. The interrogation drugs, Sarah gasped, clutching her stomach. They're reacting badly with my physiology. I think I'm going to be sick. The aliens exchanged worried glances. They had been using mild chemical agents to make her more compliant, but their knowledge of human biology was limited. The possibility of accidentally killing their only source of human intelligence data made them nervous. As they clustered around her, arguing about whether to call their medical specialists, Sarah made her move. Years of military training had taught her to recognize opportunity, and 3 days of careful observation had shown her exactly where each alien kept their weapons, how they moved, and what their blind spots were. She lunged forward with explosive speed, her hand closing around the pistol before the junior officer could react. The alien's reflexes were fast, but he had been distracted by her apparent illness and wasn't prepared for such sudden aggression. Sarah twisted the weapon free and rolled backward, chambering around as she moved. The Zephyrians responded instantly, reaching for their plasma weapons with practiced efficiency. But they had made a critical error. They were too close together in the confined space of the cell, and their energy weapons required a brief charging cycle before firing. Sarah had already calculated these factors into her escape plan. She squeezed the trigger. The modified ammunition her grandfather had designed contained a depleted uranium core wrapped in high explosive material, designed specifically to penetrate advanced alien armor. The round struck the junior officer's center mass with devastating effect. Instead of bouncing